Hello, and welcome to this session. I'm very happy to be here today to talk with you about Academy-owned scholarly publishing at the Big Ten Academic Alliance. I'm Kate McCready. I'm based out of the University of Minnesota Libraries, and I'm currently working as a visiting program officer at the Big Ten in a 3-year position to examine scholarly publishing activities across the Big Ten institutions. Now, my slides are available for you to follow along at. You can go get them at z.umn.edu/LPF2023. I have some charts toward the end of my presentation that are a little bit small. So if you would like to be able to zoom in, please pop over and take a look at those slides there. And again, that's at z.umn.edu/LPF2023. So to give you a little outline of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to cover what is the Big Ten Academic Alliance, for those of you who aren't familiar, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're building there, which we're calling the Big Collection. And then I'm going to get more specific and talk about the work that I'm doing to study Academy-owned scholarly publishing, where I've done a landscape assessment thus far. And I'm going to be sharing with you the findings that have arisen. So what are some of the shared challenges? What are the themes that I've been hearing? And where are the strengths? And what are the opportunities that have arisen? So first, who we are and what we're building at the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So by this summer, when USC and UCLA join the Big Ten, we will have 17 libraries collaborating together. Now, across the Big Ten Academic Alliance, the institutions collaborate in a variety of areas: technology, education, human resources, education, finance, and the libraries. And the library initiatives where I'm situated, they participate in many collective actions. We do collective purchasing, we do cataloging together, we work on accessibility issues together, we have the geoportal and collection management, and we're really looking at what's possible because of the scale that the BTA libraries have. When you think about the materials that we own, this is one sense of scale, is that we steward over 1/5 of the print titles in the US. And more than half of those titles are held in only a single institution. So we have this unparalleled scale and relative coherence of the Big Ten libraries working together means that as a group, we have an extraordinary opportunity to make changes in areas of shared values. And open access and scholarly publishing is one of those areas. So what we're doing is that our work is really centered on our users, the scholars. We base our collective decisions on our values and on this guiding star statement. So this statement was drafted by the library deans last August, and it is our shared vision for the future. It's that we are in agreement that the work of the Big Ten libraries is to advance a just, trustworthy, scalable, and sustainable knowledge ecosystem. And the deans have collectively endorsed the idea that making scholarship open and more equitable is the lead purpose of our collaborative work. So we have a couple goals when we think about that vision statement that they crafted, and we're putting all of those goals underneath the umbrella of calling it the Big Collection. So the Big Collection is a major initiative of the Big Ten Academic Alliance libraries to move from managing our independent collections to working together to build one shared and fully networked collection. And this unified collection will lead to increased access to materials, to reduce storage costs eventually, and to the ability to leverage our collective buying power. But we can also advance our shared values. So imagine every student and faculty member with seamless discovery to deliver access to the pool of resources that we share. And this is a major step forward for libraries to be able to do something at scale like this. Another of our goals that is aligned with our values is to partner to bring about the transformation of academic publishing and scholarly communication. And we're working within an open publishing strategy that we are advancing in order to move content to open and support the kinds of publications that we believe are necessary for the Academy. So the first step in doing that work is really understanding what is currently happening. So the goals that that I have for the initiative to study and advocate for Academy-owned scholarly publishing is to start working to investigate direction and strategy, and then to strengthen the publishing capacity within the Big Ten and outline a course of action for us to increase our scale and our influence. So I have been working for the last several months on a landscape assessment where I have worked to identify stakeholders across the Big Ten, and that included library publishers, institutional repository managers, OER librarians, press directors, scholarly communications librarians, and others that were brought into the conversation, and I surveyed them and I interviewed them in order to go deeper. And then I've really been working for the last few months on analyzing the data that I gathered in order to identify themes and identify potential areas for direction. And as you can imagine, I surfaced many, many challenges that are shared by library publishers. And but I also found some really amazing strengths and identified some opportunities of where we could work together. I do have data from university press conversations and OER publishing specifically and IR management specifically. But for this presentation today, I really tried to just pull out the views of the library publishers. So in the survey that I conducted, I asked respondents to rank how difficult different tasks were. It was a long list of tasks that library publishers do, and I broke it into 6 categories. So that's how I'm going to present the data to you right now. And I'm going to start with business operations. Another thing to note about the survey responses is that I only got responses for those tasks for people who did them. So if they didn't do the task, then they didn't rank how difficult it was. And on the screen, you might be able to see that the blue is easy, the orange is moderate, and the gray is difficult. So that's how they rank them. All right, so in business operations, you see I only had 4 areas that were noted here, but you see that there's not very much blue. The majority is moderate to difficult for these tasks, and that includes setting up or revising workflows, staff management, managing finances. These were all considered to be either moderately difficult or very difficult. In business relationships, similarly, there's a little bit more blue in this space. So all of them had some easy, some folks found this easy, but most respondents, and I mean the majority, found them either moderately hard to do or difficult for all of these tasks. And that included providing guidance on OA publishing, which had the largest number of easiest respondents, but the vendor relationships and partnerships and doing marketing and branding for the services, those were all considered to be more difficult than easy. In technology, you see this list gets really quite long of the number of tasks on it. There's a lot more on this list, but migrating publishing platforms wins as the hardest task. And that one is such a massive task that, of course, I think that's not surprising that that would be considered hard. And anyone who's done it would agree that's a very challenging thing to do. But other things that fell into this were establishing and running publishing infrastructure systems and experimenting with new technologies. migrating a publication from one publisher to another. All of these were seen as very challenging. Within editorial work, everything on this list is reported to be moderately hard or difficult by the majority. So every item, and you've seen that as a trend so far in these responses. The non-standard tasks of problem solving and dealing with ethics violations, those were noted to be the most difficult, but analytics and metrics were challenging. Marketing individual publications was challenging, and recruiting editors and reviewers, another area of difficulty. Production work, and this is the fifth of the categories that I have on this presentation today. This one, there's actually one area that's reported to be easier by the majority, and that was tracking work on the publications, but everything else had some challenges. From layout, composition, to copy editing, proofreading, managing multimedia content, managing submissions. These were all to be found to be moderate to difficult to do. You can see a couple of them, there's not very many respondents for those areas, and that includes plagiarism detection, where it's not being done at all. And then in post-production work, you can see it shifts. So this is where there's a lot more blue. This work is considered to be much easier to do, moving things into production, generating XML, registering DOIs, creating metadata. These are all easier to do. And accessibility checks was the only task that was reported to be on the more difficult side on this list. So when you add up all these challenges and then start talking with the individuals about their responses, there were kind of three major themes. One is that folks had a really hard time with strategic planning, with thinking about future direction. Another was that they were just amazingly challenged with their capacity and the current resources that they had in people, mostly in people, that they just had more work than they could get to. And that's why they responded that each of these things were so challenging. It wasn't understanding them per se, but it was being able to get to them. And that's directly related to scoping services. I found a lot of people that expressed that the scope of their services was a little unclear, and they were trying to figure that out. So those were the three kind of main overarching themes that came out. But then there was a lot of talk again about migrating individual publications, keeping up with technology, migrating systems, accessibility, preservation, usage data, marketing and branding. Those were the areas that people felt like maybe they didn't have all the skill sets that they would want. And now finally, move a little bit more into strengths. So in general, even though people felt like they were lacking in capacity, they did feel like they had some of the resources that they needed, that they had the technology that they needed, they had some budgetary support, they had connections within the library to get the expertise that they needed, whether it was a copyright librarian or somebody helping them think through metadata issues, that they had some resources available to them, and that there was a lot of support from their administrations. So they felt that the administrations valued their work, saw it as a future growth area, and they were all producing things that they could be proud of and that their libraries were proud of. So when you combine those challenges, these strengths, and kind of all those difficulty ratings, what came about is that people were really desiring increased connections with each other, to problem solve, to share resources with one another. And they wanted to do more collective action. They wanted to share work in strategic planning. They wanted to share work in vendorship partners. They wanted to share work in having some technology infrastructures. And they even wanted to share work in services, and thinking about how they might be providing services as a collective, and to offer it at scale. So those are really the high level findings that I had. Next steps, I'm going to be pulling the BTA community into conversations, and we'll be exploring partnerships with vendors, making sure that the BTA has a chance to be more of a community practice within our organizations. And then we'll be outlining proposals for collective action, getting approval from our stakeholders, and seeking funding. So look for more work in this space in the future, and we'll be sure to share out what we're working on. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. I really am excited to take your questions and be in conversation with you. And so thank you for your time and attention.